Welcome to the Center for Baptist. Welcome to the Center for Baptist Leadership podcast, hosted by William Wolfe. Our mission is to cultivate courageous and biblical Baptist leadership for the 21st century. We aim to revitalize the Southern Baptist Convention from within, defend it from those who seek its destruction, and serve as a better Baptist voice in the public square.
All right. Welcome to this live edition of what's hopefully going to be a new product we're rolling out here. Just bear with me as I get my bearings and adjustment. We're hoping to launch really an almost daily show, if we can pull it off, the CBL report. You've seen the new graphic there where we discuss major issues, not just in the Southern Baptist Convention, but political issues, international issues, where we kind of provide a detailed analysis and a breakdown of all the news that Baptists really need to know going forward here. So this is sort of a test run of that. The Center for Baptist Leadership report. I'm William Wolfe, the Executive Director of the Center for Baptist Leadership. We should be live right now on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So you can find us on any of those platforms. Please make sure to share the live stream as we're going here and invite your friends. Obviously, this should be sort of recorded and you can watch it afterwards as well. There was so many breaking things happening just in the last few hours that are important to Southern Baptists and to all evangelical Christians. I thought we'd go ahead and just jump on and do it live, as they say. And we've got some other interesting things we're working on with the Center for Baptist Leadership I want to talk to you guys about. So today is July, what is it? July what? I can't even remember the dates. July 23rd, 2025. So we're coming to you live July 23rd, 2025. This first edition of the Center for Baptist Leadership Report. So let me give you guys just a brief update on what we're doing with the Center for Baptist Leadership now that we're past the convention. Obviously, the work that we are trying to do, I think, is more important than ever. And we're seriously gaining ground in the Southern Baptist Convention. I mean, what we are going to talk about today shows why our mission matters. And what is our mission? Our mission is to cultivate courageous and uncompromising Baptist leadership, both in the Southern Baptist Convention and in our country for the 21st century. You know, here we are in 2025. We've got 75 years left of this century. You know, I highly doubt I will live to see the end of it, or many of you will live to see the end of it. Some of you will. But really, the future of the Southern Baptist Convention in the 21st century is not written, and it's open. It's being contested right now. What direction will we go in? And all three words of those in our mission matters: courageous, uncompromising, and Baptist. Unfortunately, I believe that Baptists have really ceded the public field, the public ground, the civil square, the political arena, whatever you want to call it, in the last multi-decades now to the left in many ways. And in other ways, we've abandoned intellectual and philosophical leadership of the conservative political movement to Roman Catholics and other people. And I appreciate a lot of the work that Roman Catholics do politically. Obviously, we are not aligned theologically, but there's no reason that Southern Baptists, as the largest Protestant denomination in America, would give away this important work to other denominations and other Christian outlets. And you know, we saw a recent clip of Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson talking about the Protestant spirit in America, how it's been quenched in many ways. Oh, look, I've got Chase Davis joining live. I sent out a bat signal to some of my friends to see if they wanted to join me We're actually going to have John Whitehead on later to talk about the ERLC, but we've got Chase now. So Chase, let me just finish this little riff, and then we can get into our first subject, but you can just listen along. In other words, what we're trying to do, both theological revitalization of the Southern Baptist Convention, make sure that we're faithful to the Baptist faith and message is so important. And at the same time, trying to make sure that we are active in leadership roles in the American public square is also critical as well. Trying to let Tyler Cox in too, but he doesn't have his microphone or his video on. So with that said, we're still going full steam ahead. And what's happening today shows why our work is so needed. Today, it was announced that Matthew Barrett, a systematic theologian, a pretty high-profile theology professor in the Southern Baptist Convention at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, has become an Anglican. Let me share the screen, and I can show you this announcement here, and then Chase can join me in commenting on this. So here we go. Trinity Anglican Seminary welcomes Dr. Matthew Barrett to faculty. They are pleased to announce the appointment of Dr. Matthew Barrett as a research professor of theology beginning in August of 2025. And obviously, they think this is going to strengthen them as Anglicans. Matthew Barrett's very well known in the Southern Baptist world. He's done a lot of work on classical theism, as it's called. And we've published some concerns at Center for Baptist Leadership with his work. But Chase, what's your reaction to this announcement?
Well, it sounds like a great fit for him, a great position if he's truly become Anglican. You know, it's really unfortunate for a lot of these guys who end up doing this. I would assume he has already been Anglican. I would hope he didn't just change his convictions for a new job. But he was employed by the Southern Baptist Institution while being Anglican. That's kind of suspicious behavior, to say the least. You know, Barrett, he seems to have had great theological output in terms of publication, wide readership on his work, and I'm sure some of that work is valuable in some way to some people somewhere in an academic setting. But kind of what we've seen out of some of these figures that are more kind of the Geld and kind of in the ivory tower is really distinguishing between the lack of courage, you know, and this is what I've been kind of banging the drum on for years now, is a lot of these guys with the intellectual chops and resources to really help the church, equip the church to go do battle against the worldly ideologies of our day that are really bearing down on Christians and breathing down their necks in the workplace, especially Southern Baptists. They're often very silent and they don't really contribute much to the average churchgoer. Now, that may be their, you know, calling, I suppose. They can just kind of just write on particularities of theology, and maybe they should stay in their lane for that stuff. But there's plenty of resources that the Academy could provide, and places like Midwestern could provide, in order to equip pastors and just lay church people to think clearly on blatant issues that need to be addressed by Christians, like transgender ideology. I mean, that's an easy one that should be kind of a layup for most academic theologians. So I don't single out Barrett necessarily in this, although we're talking about Barrett, but this is a common theme, and I have yet to see any kind of writing or anything from these guys on these matters. And I think that goes back to something that I know you're a big believer in, and that kind of the broader mission of Center for Baptist Leadership is about, is providing a better Baptist voice. And really that voice is going to be marked by courage and confronting the worldly ideologies of our day, representing Southern Baptists with biblical fidelity. And for a lot of these Southern Baptist academic types, not only are they, turns out they might be Anglican, but also like they don't really want to provide a better Baptist voice. They just kind of want to like have this career and do their thing. And like I said, that may be his choice. Maybe he has good reasons for that. But, you know, this is very indicative of somebody who's kind of like moving away. And you know, it's sad when somebody purports to represent Southern Baptists and yet on the side has not been behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, obviously one of the main questions we have to ask is, when was he Anglican and when did he know it? And how long has he been Anglican, teaching at a Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, being paid for with Southern Baptist Convention Cooperative Program dollars? How long has this been going on? What was the last class he taught there? I mean, I assume he taught there in the previous spring semester. I'm not 100% sure. But I brought this article back up again, Chase, because let's look at his output here a little bit. You know, he is currently writing a systematic theology for Baker Academic. Oh, what is Baker Academic? Baker Academic is the academic imprint of Lifeway of the Southern Baptist Convention. So there's that. So we're going to have an Anglican writing a systematic theology. So if you want a real Baptist systematic theology, make sure to check out Stephen Wellum's multiple volume Baptist systematic theology. Chase, I'm getting feedback. Echo, if you can fix that. There we go. That's better. And so check out Stephen Wellum's, of course. So, Matthew Barrett, he wrote on the doctrine of God, simply Trinity. I remember when that book came out, it was widely read. And, evangelicals, Baptists were like, yes, this is really important theological retrieval work that's happening. We need to make sure we get the Trinity right. He wrote on classical Trinitarianism and the Reformation as renewal. He's the director of the Center for Classical Theology and the editor-in-chief of Credo. So Credo is this interesting multi-denominational effort. Well, it's certainly multi-denominational now, and it was before. Interesting, nobody complains about Credo doing pan-evangelical efforts, I will note, and Matthew becoming an Anglican from leaving, a Baptist theological seminary. But so he's done a lot of good. He's done a lot of, you could say, good academic work, but it's not necessarily theologically Baptist. People have these concerns. They've seen him moving in this direction, moving away from a really grounded commitment to Baptistic theology. People were wondering if he was becoming Catholic potentially. Sometimes we've heard concerns about crypto Catholics in the SBC, and now he's gone Anglican. So Chase, what do you think this tells us about maybe what we could call the evangelical inferiority complex? Would you think a move like this for someone like Dr. Barrett is in any way due to him thinking that Southern Baptists are backward rubes and he'd be better off in another denomination? I mean, I don't know why. He hasn't said why he did it, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very common thing. I mean, most evangelical seminaries are very much strivers to be accepted by kind of elite academia. And so they'll often hire people with credentials that come from a secular institution in order to come into their evangelical institution. And then they bring those ideologies with them. I saw this at the seminary I went to. And so, yeah, there is a problem with this. You saw this with Beth Moore, who had some association affiliations with Southern Baptist Life, and many people may have read her at one point. I never did, but I think she was a popular figure. She became Anglican, and so this is not necessarily untrod ground for people that grow up in kind of the Southern Baptist world. I think what you're offering, what Center for Baptist Leadership is offering, is something that's deeply needed, because what happens is Southern Baptist either laymen or pastors or academics don't really get into their own history, don't know their own history, don't know kind of the doctrine that we come from, and aren't really proud of their history. And so they end up looking for something that's going to boost their credentials. Like you said, don't know if that played a role with Matthew here. It could have. I think social pressure and conformity naturally plays out for a variety of people, and why they want to do different things. But this path is not uncommon for people like him that want kind of more academic output, more academic prestige. And yeah, for a lot of the platform guys in the SBC, you see kind of this air of, oh, we know better than you. You don't really know what you're talking about. And so you just really get an air of what I would call arrogance. And I'm not saying Matthew necessarily has that, but you do get that sense from the platform guys that they just know better. You just need to trust the platform. And so they're always looking to network outside the SBC. So they're going to get in organizations and other entities that aren't SBC aligned in order to gain access. And so this is very common practice. But yeah, I think what my heart is for Christians today, particularly Southern Baptists, is that they would know that they don't need to go to Anglicanism. They don't need to go, God forbid, to Catholicism, which, Anglicanism is very similar to that, but very distinct. To find deep-rooted tradition, they don't need to find that elsewhere. We have that, and we can press into that, and we can own that, and we can be proud of it. And it's really sad, I think many Southern Baptist pastors are kind of embarrassed to be Southern Baptist, and I think that's a shame. They should really be proud to be part of the biggest Protestant domination in America, and they should be proud of our heritage. Not in a sinful way, of course, but it shouldn't be something we hide. A lot of these Southern Baptist churches will hide kind of their affiliation with the Southern Baptists on their website or even on their sign or anything like that. They'll remove the word Baptist at all from their church. And so it's just, it's kind of indicative of a mood among educated academic type Baptists, which really doesn't serve Baptists well.
Yeah, well, so I brought up this article here that we published at the Center for Baptist Leadership about Matthew Barrett, particularly on the social issues. So I think this really plays into it, that it really is this sort of sterilized theology in the academic ivory tower, trying to be divorced from the pressing cultural challenges of our day. So Matthew Barrett is embarking upon this retrieval project of classical Trinitarianism, classical theism. Good stuff to do, no doubt, right? But like, what good is that theology if it's not helping us like live our lives? It's not bolstering us at the point of greatest attack today. And even worse, if you're using this broad ecumenical retrieval project to mask compromises on other important pieces of Christian doctrine, particularly the ones that are socially contested. So Tyler Cox wrote this article. It's great. He says here that some newfound classical theists explicitly reject the same classical teachings on gender, both human and divine. And so in Matthew Barrett's recent book on classical Trinitarianism, Retrieving the Nicene Doctrine of the Triune God, he included Amy Peeler in that book, in that compendium. Who is Amy Peeler? Well, she's a professor at Wheaton. Let's call that one strike, Chase. One red flag or one strike. She's an outspoken egalitarian. There's two strikes. She's an ordained rector in the Episcopalian Church. There's three strikes. So she's already out. But to cap it all off, Peeler advocates for feminine pronouns when referring to God, and has argued that we can pray to God as mother because God is not male or masculine. So this is the type of person that Matthew Barrett is not just working with, but is intentionally platforming and promoting her scholarship to the broader evangelical world, and certainly to Southern Baptists up until yesterday, up until today, because he was a Southern Baptist. Honestly, one of the more high profile theologians we've had in Southern Baptist life over the last few years. And so, I mean, I think this might be a seed of this shift too, is that I think Matthew Barrett knows that he can only play footsie with feminists for so long in Southern Baptist life, because those Billy Baptists with their Bibles are going to say, hey, this isn't what we stand for. So, Chase, do you have any thoughts on that? Because Matthew's not the only one who is sort of, I think, doing this kind of work, trying to say we're doing really important orthodox work on classical Trinitarianism or classical theism, but at the same time, they're compromising and adopting heterodox positions on other major issues like complementarianism.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to a matter of who we're serving, right? Who we're serving, whether it's an academic work or in the pulpit. We're serving the Lord first and foremost, but if we're part of an entity where, we're receiving funds, we should be serving, that entity and bolstering it up and equipping those people to know their faith and live into their historic Orthodox beliefs. So when you partner with somebody like this lady, Amy, who's part of the Episcopal Church, it's very odd. And it's not only, like you said, three strikes you're out, but then she goes on to promote praying to Mother as God and all this kind of stuff. It's not just odd, it's bad behavior. It's very suspicious. And I think one of the problems you'll see, and for lay people that may not know this, what happens with this type of work is it gets widely promoted in the seminaries. They become textbooks, so they get put in the libraries. And then those pastors and those visitors, those students, they pick it up in the library thinking this is a good, this is what these are Southern Baptist books, Southern Baptist doctrine. I can trust this work. They pick it up, read Amy Peeler, and I was, well, I guess this is within the bounds of what we believe. And then they take it back to their church and lead studies on it. And so it has a downstream effect that a lot of people don't count the cost of. They kind of see this academic doing this odd work with this weird egalitarian at Wheaton. And they're like, well, what's the big deal? Well, it's a big deal because these kind of things have wide effect, especially with someone like Matthew Barrett, who's kind of well known in the evangelical landscape as an academic. And like I said, he probably does good work on Trinitarian stuff. But that book itself kind of reveals his trajectory and revealed where he was going. So I hope he kind of releases kind of some transparency about, hey, when did this happen? When did you come to Anglican convictions? And that would be helpful for Southern Baptists. And I would hope that the librarian out there, I guess he's Midwestern, would pull these books because they're not representative of Southern Baptists anymore. That'd be a good look.
I don't have a lot of confidence in the librarian at Midwestern, I have to say, but maybe This is a time to shine. Tyler Cox let me know that actually Peeler leaves open. So Amy Peeler, Episcopalian priestess, open egalitarian, arguing that we can pray to Mother God, platformed by Matthew Barrett while he was at Midwestern, on work on Nicene Trinitarian orthodoxy. Tyler Cox notes that she actually leaves open the denial of Nicaea, despite being a part of his book on Nicaea. So she's like, you don't actually have to hold to the confessions. It really is the meme theology, right? It's like, yes, I hold to all the historic creeds and confessions, but no, I reject common sense views on gender and sexuality. You've never debated somebody like me before. So look, I mean, honestly, I'm trying to be charitable. I was very charitable on a recent appearance with Eric Metaxas regarding stuff with Matthew Arbo and Langford, and people thought I was too nice. But like, this is a loss for Southern Baptists in some way, but in other ways, it's not, because, Matthew Barrett clearly was not part of our tribe. He wasn't a Baptist. I don't know how long he wasn't a Baptist and still teaching at a Baptist seminary. But it is a shame in many ways. Chase, John and I are going to move on to some other things. Do you want to just stick around and talk about the ERLC, or do you want to go? What do you want to do? You can stay if you want.
I appreciate
You're welcome
the invite.
to stay.
Yeah, no, thank you. I got some work to get back to, so I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Chase. All right, John, welcome to the live show, man. Glad to have
William,
you.
good to be here. Yeah, sorry. I see I was probably live for a few minutes before I knew it. So sorry for the far off looks there. I listened to Chase.
No, it's great. Well, John, let's get your quick reaction on the Matthew Barrett thing. And to prompt that, let me pull up a post from Tom Buck here, which I think he's asking some important questions. He says, honest questions. When did Barrett last teach a class at MBTS? At that time, was Barrett in agreement with and teaching according to the Baptist Faith and Message 2000? Note Jason Allen's 2025 SBC annual meeting report, which I assume the reference there is Allen saying everybody at our seminary affirms, the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. When did the school become aware of Barrett changing his theological positions? John, do you think those are fair questions that Southern Baptists deserve answers to? Is this an in-house issue? What sort of clarity should Southern Baptists expect from a pretty high-profile departure like Matthew Barrett from Midwestern to Trinity Anglican?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tom's questions are fair, right? I think those are important questions. I'm not sure whether this was a example of the system working or not working, right? You could say, in one sense, somebody that really has Anglican convictions that's down in the Anglican seminary, that's best. That's best for everybody. It's best that they not be in a Baptist seminary. And so if some process at Midwestern sussed that out and had those conversations, then I'm glad those conversations happened. If as Tom may be concerned, people were raising concerns about relationships with Amy Peeler for several years, and it looked like those were being ignored. It'll be interesting to find out maybe they weren't ignored. Maybe there was some activity based on that, or maybe not. So one, is this an example of the system working? Or in two, what can be done to make sure it's not happening elsewhere? It is, I heard of another Southern Baptist professor who'd become an Anglican in recent days, and I can't think of any time in my life in which many Southern Baptists swim the Thames, as they say, over into the Anglican Church. So it's a strange, from Baptist eyes, it's a strange path. And so what else is going on that might, are others going to follow that path as well? That's an issue to be addressed. But as I heard you and Chase say, what we mostly care about is that Southern Baptist institutions are proudly Southern Baptist and backing up their doctrine. And if Professor Barrett doesn't hold those convictions, then good on them for not putting up a charade.
Yeah. And what is with semi-high profile, some more than others, Baptists becoming Anglicans who maybe have some sort of left-leaning sensibility? So, I mean, I don't know if Russell Moore actually is an Anglican or not. He's at an Anglican church, right? So Russell Moore, fill in the blanks, leaves and joins Ray Ortland's church. So he's at an Anglican church. Matthew Arbo, former ethicist at Midwestern Oklahoma Baptist University, becomes an Anglican, recently hired by Senator Langford. Lots of issues there. I talked about that with Eric Metaxas. And now Matthew Barrett, as I said, playing footsie with feminists. And I think that's a very fair characterization of the theological work that he's been doing, or at least the people he's been welcoming into the tent, has now gone Anglican. John, is there some sort of social dynamic there? Is sort of left of center sympathetic evangelicalism, anti-MAGA evangelicalism more welcome in Anglicanism than it is in SBC?
I confess, I just don't have that, whatever gene it is or brain requirement it is. I don't understand how you would make that move. Just because, I appreciate Anglicans who have stood up for the Bible in their denomination. And so I understand there's ACNA and other groups that have moved in a more conservative direction than Bishop Spong was back in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up. But in terms of having a coherent position about the church and its polity and what Scripture teaches, I confess I don't understand how the Anglican position makes sense in America where you have First Amendment freedoms. It's the state church in England. Obviously, the Episcopalian Church is the state church, and so that system of bishops comes with a sense of history, and it comes maybe with a certain set of social class expectations for Anglophiles. But as a coherent position about what the Bible teaches, I just don't see it. And so I confess I'm so immune to the attraction of Anglicanism or Episcopalianism. I'm not sure what it is that somebody would say, oh, I've studied the Bible and I've come to different conclusions, and that's led me to this system of bishops coming out of the Church of England. I don't understand that. I'm happy for somebody to try to make their pitch to me. I get from those I've talked to, those who will tell me why they've moved, and I have heard of a few in recent years, it's that they don't fight, or they seem to be above it all, or it's the closest thing to the Catholic Church without being Catholic, and none of those appeal to me. None of those appeal to me as somebody who wants the Bible to be taken seriously in our churches, in our lives. And so, again, I'm thankful for my Anglican friends and brothers. I'm glad some of them have moved in a more conservative direction over the years. I just think it tends to pull left, not right. And as somebody who's a fan of looking at the Bible to see what it says and applying that to our lives, I don't see the structure of the Anglican Church being the biblical teaching. So I'm an unashamed Baptist at that point. Again, more power to those that have a different belief, I suppose, and good for you for being consistent with your beliefs. But I just don't see how that works out. The shift from Baptist to Anglican seems to me like a pretty big shift, and I don't really understand it.
Well, it's not just a massive shift on baptismal ecclesiology or on baptismal theology or ecclesiology, right? So, I mean, it's like going in the complete opposite direction of Baptist, right? On baptism, on ecclesiology, but then also I think this is a very interesting point to note as well on their understanding of church-state relationships.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's just be really honest here, very honest. Matthew Barrett, by joining the Anglican Church, is now officially and doctrinally 10 times more of a Christian nationalist than you and I will ever be, right? I mean, he has traded the Baptist view of, if we want to use that phrase, free church in a free state, for adopting a state church model. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. You have to really change your theological positions on a lot of things to get from being Baptist to being Anglican.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't see that system of teaching being kind of a natural extension of Baptist ideas, right? If you were following the Baptist principles, said I support a free church in a free state. I think church and state should be separate. To shift over to Anglicanism, that is an extension of Episcopalianism. I don't get it. Some Anglican will have to come along and make their pitch to me about why it all makes sense. But yeah, as far as I can tell, on church-state issues especially, it's a utter rejection of what Baptists would believe.
Right. And of course, you and I both subscribe to a much more robust and right understanding of what separation of church really means constitutionally, what actually is entailed by the Establishment Clause in the American founding. We're not using that in sort of post-war liberal Baptist parlance, Johnson Amendment, all sorts of different things there. But just in general, even at the most robust understanding that you and I would have, in terms of what the state could do to facilitate facilitate the thriving of churches in America or denominations, or whether or not we would have had a problem with states having, their own establishments in the American founding era, churches influencing government. None of that gets us to a federally state-sponsored church.
Right.
We just aren't there.
Yeah. No, at no point have Baptists ever been the official state denomination of a state, but Episcopalians were, right? They were the official church of many states. And so, as I told somebody the other week, I am still a disestablishmentarian, right? I still don't think it's in the best interest to establish official denominations. But obviously Anglicanism holds that in a much different place. And so if you, whatever it is you were attracted to in the Baptist Faith and Message, there's lots of contradiction in the 39 articles.
Yeah. Well, last question on this, and let's get to the ERLC amnesty push. It's Tuesday again. It's Groundhog Day. If it's the ERLC is pushing amnesty. But before we do that, John, because you're just such a good thinker, you're as Baptist as they come. What do you think this move says, if anything, about the state of the Southern Baptist Convention, about the state of Baptist theology? Why are we losing guys like this? Or better yet, maybe the better question is, why are we allowing men like this to matriculate up through our systems, to be platformed, to be given a high profile, when there could be warning signs that they're going in this direction? And maybe are there other men that Southern Baptists should be looking for instead? What is this? What do we take away from this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to have to be hyper concerned about what every SBC. Well, if you're in the SBC institutions, you probably should be concerned. I think Baptists are a wide tent under certain beliefs, and those beliefs, there's going to be lots of disagreements about particular applications, and you and I, frankly, debate those all the time. And so, I don't want to say. I don't want to be too concerned about, well, here's somebody with a different belief than me in the SBC. I do think, though, as a generation, as a matter of just management and handoff and leadership, we do need to be looking for young men that are not just Baptist in name only, but appear to be going in some direction that will expand the reach of Southern Baptists. But somebody who's committed to the core doctrines and who is willing to take, as I would say, blood on the floor sometimes, really willing to take slings and arrows if necessary to defend Baptist convictions. And as I think it was an article for, it was the interview with the Substack, James McDonald on Substack. I said, Southern Baptists, our conversionist impulse sometimes leads us to hand off to the next generation, hoping that guy has got a way to expand. And so maybe if we could get the Baptists and the Anglicans under one roof, right? If we could just have Anglican politics, but Baptist beliefs, we could expand. If we could change our social position more like the Anglicans instead of being who we are. That, for whatever reason, has proven attractive to Southern Baptist leaders handing off. And it does seem to me there has been overinvestment in young faces that don't sound Baptist, not that kind of Baptists, and that ends up undermining the institutions that I think those leaders wanted to protect, the very convictions those leaders want to protect. If you hand off the keys to the ERLC or to the seminaries or whatever it is with somebody that says, yeah, I'm a Baptist, but I'm a different kind of Baptist. I'm this kind of Baptist. I can change. I just think over time, that person is likely to say, and I didn't need to even be a Baptist. Here's what really matters is the thing that made me different, not the thing that made me unified with you at one time. And that gets thrown overboard. So we've had over the past 15 or 20 years, just lots of bad leadership transitions, generational transitions. I don't want to blame the older generation of leaders necessarily. I understand what they were thinking, but there's a real risk in handing off to the next generation and thinking, and this guy is more popular than me. Probably not. Probably this guy has different beliefs and different priorities, and that will become his priority as soon as he can get free of the Baptist connections.
Yeah, as you were talking there, I was thinking that we don't see this happen in the other direction. We don't see high-profile Anglicans joining Southern Baptist theological seminaries. I've seen the light on credo baptism. Also interesting, the guy's name is Credo. His organization is Credo. Credo what? Not credo baptism. I don't know what it is. Credo what anymore? But we don't see. I can't remember last time a Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, any one of the six, hired a high-profile Presbyterian convert or Anglican convert or Roman Catholic convert. At least not at any point in
William Carey, right? William Carey was the last high profile.
And so, but here's what I'm thinking, John. I'm thinking that one is that we have thin institutional fiber right now. Like we are sort of, I think, embarrassed about ourselves. And because we are trying to be really, in many ways, Southern Baptists are trying to be a non-denominational denomination. We are kind of year over year throwing overboard our heritage, our history, our distinctives. And we're either doing it on purpose or we're just doing it in practice because we're trying to be a seeker-sensitive hot dog church, right? As Colin Redimer calls it, right? And so the more that Southern Baptist, this is what I'm trying to say here. I think the more that Southern Baptists try to be the non-denominational Baptist convention, the more people won't understand or want to be Baptist. What heritage are we offering them? What sort of cultural stickiness are we providing for these people? A tradition you can be proud of, and then I think this also kind of plays directly into the ways that Baptists, I think, have really dropped the ball culturally, publicly, politically. Well, if being Baptist is just synonymous with the evangelical immigration table, or the sort of center-left political causes, what is there that attracts people to that who are committed Christians, committed Bible-believing Christians? I mean, that gives us the rise of sort of 1689 Baptist or conservative Baptist churches leading the SBC. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot, but it's like, be Baptist or you will be nothing. And I think this is another example of how we're failing to provide it. And particularly at a time when I think people want that. I mean, however you read the tea leaves on young men becoming more religious, I think the reports of men joining the Eastern Orthodox Church or even joining the Catholic Church are overblown, but they're always interesting because they weren't that before they were that, right? So it's like the profile you see of the evangelical intern who goes to Washington, D.C. and then becomes a devout, practicing, traditional Latin Mass Catholic. Well, it's an interesting profile because he wasn't that and now he is that, and nobody does that for Baptists. So that would be my takeaway from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I've told you several times, there is in kind of a democratic, the Baptist polity we've got, we put these leaders in charge of things. And in some ways we respect market forces, right? We respect individuals making choices and that kind of shaping our polity. But it does seem like you get some guys in a struggling institution and they think, well, somebody else has got conservatives covered. If I'm going to grow, I need to expand this thing. I need to attract somebody else. And so you can tell the institutions that say, well, I'm going to try to attract the non-Baptists. I'm going to try to play footsie with the feminists. I'm going to try to expand by adding women as well as men to my seminary roles. And I think that action ultimately gets you killed in the Southern Baptist Convention, right? Ultimately, after time plays out, I think what Baptists want to see are people standing up and applying Baptist principles to life, right? They want to see somebody living out Baptist conviction, and they'll flock to that if you'll show them conviction. But the short-term thinker, the pragmatic entity leader that says, I got to grow this thing, I got to get cash in the door, and I'm going to do that by attracting those that don't have strong Baptist beliefs. I think that is a short-sighted strategy that we've seen fail time and time again. That's resulted in leadership failure time and time again. But when people get in the room in a crisis and don't have strong principles, don't want to see Baptist actions in public life, they are willing to try to make those shortcuts to stay afloat, and that ends up poorly for everybody.
Yeah, well said, John. Speaking of core Baptist beliefs, I don't know if you knew this, and I've learned it recently, that supporting amnesty for illegal immigrants is a key Baptist tenet in the public square. To be Baptist is to support amnesty, apparently, or so I'm told from the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission.
I am surprised to learn what Baptists have been saying.
Yeah, and so here we have it. The Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, which you are a former trustee of, that esteemed entity, they obviously have been in hot water in the Southern Baptist Convention for quite a few years now. And just last month, just last month, we haven't even turned the page on July yet. We took a vote at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting for the first of potentially 2 votes to abolish the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission because they're out of step with Southern Baptists on political issues. Because actually, contrary to what the ERLC believes, amnesty is not a core tenet of our Baptist political theology, and yet it is of theirs. That was a huge issue brought up. One of the things that Willie Rice, who led this effort this past year, mentioned really bothered him about the ERLC is their work with the Evangelical Immigration Table, which is a Soros-funded front group, part of the National Immigration Forum, and their work advancing amnesty. John, they're doing it again. Why are they doing it again?
Yeah, I mean, I really do think, unfortunately, Brent Leatherwood and others at ERLC really think the biggest danger to Southern Baptists in political life is the Southern Baptists, not the politicians. They are really concerned about presenting an image of another kind of Baptist, and their biggest concern is chiding and trying to get the pews to align with what they think would be a more winsome message. And unfortunately, that is exactly the situation that led to the split between the Baptist Joint Committee and the SBC back in the 90s. The very reason we took that assignment away from BJC and gave it to Richard Land at the Christian Life Commission, now the ERLC, was just this kind of persistent, stubborn insistence that the Baptists don't really know what they believe, and let's go out and tell the world what they should believe and try to, in effect, browbeat them into saying things that would be more winsome. And we're going to do it again, I'm afraid. I would think that 2 votes year over year, where 40% of the convention says this organization is headed in a direction that we would consider abolishing it. I would like to think that would send a shot across the bow to say things have to change. And yet here we are, July 23, 6 or 8 weeks after the convention. And we're telling the world now that this bill that Baptists never addressed, this bill is not just a good idea or something to look at, but it's necessary under Christian doctrine. It's bizarre that we're going to use this group funded by George Soros, all those connections. We just can't let go of this group or this right to say, here's what Baptists should believe, even though they haven't said that. And it's going to be the death of meaningful SBC influence in public life.
Well, at least currently. All right, so the ERLC has an addiction. They are addicted to amnesty. They just can't quit it. They just keep coming back. So what's the latest one? Well, I've pulled up here a letter that was just recently sent, July 15th. So you know what? They got one over on us for 10 days or 8 days here, or about a week, right? They thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. So the Evangelical Immigration Table, and this was also, let me point this out. I think July 15th is right around when Salazar dropped the bill. So what does this tell me, John? And it might tell you the same thing because you know how this works. This was pre-cooked. This was pre-cooked behind the scenes. Salazar's office going to the coalitions that they know would back an amnesty bill. They didn't ask Center for Baptist Leadership if we were interested in backing their amnesty bill. So this letter was prepared in advance to drop at the same time that this bill was announced. The bill is called the Dignity Act. And of course, the standard rule of thumb for any bill name is just to assume that it does the exact opposite of what it tells you that it's doing. Right? So it's called the Dignity Act. It's sponsored by Representative Maria Salazar from Florida. And you know, I've seen this is funny too. I wonder her office has noticed this. Her office has been on a pretty aggressive PR campaign to say it's not amnesty. Apparently EIT didn't get the memo that they shouldn't admit it's amnesty in the first sentence of the letter, because this is what it says here. We urge you to consider the newly reintroduced Dignity Act, sponsored by Representative Maria Salazar, which would establish a restitution-based legalization process for immigrants present in the United States unlawfully. That's amnesty, right? Like a restitution-based legalization process for immigrants in the United States unlawfully. Those are illegal aliens willing to pay significant fines, a penalty, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't really care. I will bring this, I don't care what it is. It's amnesty. Go ahead.
You're breaking up quite a bit there, William. I don't know if you have a connection there. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can still hear you.
There you are. That's clear. Yeah, sorry. You were getting kind of lots of digital breakup there,
okay.
But I think I got most of that. Yeah, I mean, I think this bill, as I read it, it's a line-jumping bill, right? I think if you ask most Baptists, if somebody were willing to pay a fine and because of their illegal immigration, and then go through the process legally, could we live with that? Yes. This bill doesn't do that. It doesn't say go to the back of the line and do it the right way. It says jump the line if you're willing to pay a fine. And so, in essence, it's not a kind of reparations and then doing it the right way. It's a way to pay to get in the front door, not to go through the regular system. And so, I think, again, Baptists don't probably have a consensus on this bill, but it's very close to an amnesty bill, like you said.
Well, no, I mean, it really is an amnesty bill. Let me share another. Hopefully, our connection will stay here, because I want to share the screen of these this engagement, this breakdown from Will Chamberlain, senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. Great guy. Appreciate a lot of the work he does. He says, having read through the bill, it's even worse than you would think. It is an amnesty bill for illegal aliens and would absolutely blow the door open on legal migration. Thread incoming soon. Salazar should resign from Congress, and any Republican co-sponsors should think again. So then he follows up later. He says, I've now read through it, and rather than go through every single bad provision, of which there are too many to count, I've demonstrated how the white beating MS-13 gangbanger Kilmar Abrego Garcia could obtain citizenship under the law. So yeah, it's sort of the line jumping bill. Look, I mean, I trust Bill's analysis on stuff like that. He's right about these things. And so, I mean, there's no question. It really is. It's an amnesty bill, however you want to cut it. John, I mean, How are they doing this? It looks like I'm getting cut out again. Trying to reconnect, make sure you have a stable internet connection. Can you still hear me?
I've heard you, but it's pretty choppy. I suppose if there's an upload, it'll all even out. I think that's a good question. Why are they still doing this? And in some ways, this letter is worse than it's ever been. Traditionally, we would get a letter from the ERLC signed by the president or a staff member that says, well, Baptists have said this in the past, and this looks like that to us, and so we support this bill, even though Baptists had not supported it. This letter, if you look at the last paragraph on the front page there, says, obviously the bills or the letter says nothing about what Baptists believe. It's a generic letter, and it says in that last paragraph, we believe the Dignity Act offers necessary reforms. Why? And they start out, as Christians committed to the rule of law rooted in biblical conviction that God has ordained the government to restrain evil and ensure order, we believe the Dignity Act offers necessary reforms. So now it's not just, hey, we think this is a good bill. It's that biblical principles require this Dignity Act to be passed, which is so far out of what should be permissible for a group that is only supposed to communicate the positions of Southern Baptists to the public sphere. They can talk to us about what might make a good bill, but when you talk to Congress, you're only supposed to communicate what Baptists have said. And no Baptist anywhere no Baptist institution has gone on record saying Southern Baptists believe the Dignity Act offers necessary reforms using biblical principles. So it's so far out of the lane, it is just astonishing. I can't hear William, so I'll keep going. If you look back in 2024, the ERLC promised us they would do better, and the board affirmed an advocacy assessment questionnaire that said the offices told us, staff leaders have told us, they're going to ask these questions before they sign on to anything. And they listed out 7 questions. Question number 1 was, is this an issue for which we have a biblical basis to speak? Well, no, not like this. There's no biblical principle that says the Dignity Act is a required reform in American life. So it violates question number 1, shouldn't have been spoken to. Question number 2, is this an issue where the BFM 2000 has a clear position? No, the Dignity Act is not a necessary extension of the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. Shouldn't have been addressed because it fails test number 2. 3, has the annual meeting of the SBC spoken to this topic? No, we have passed resolutions that have said we would allow some citizenship-based process. If folks are here illegally, we would encourage a process by which they could get in line like everybody else and go through the citizenship process. But we've never said the Dignity Act is a position of the SBC, and our resolutions haven't come anywhere close to addressing that. Shouldn't have been addressed under test number 3. 4, what has been the historic position of the ERLC or CLC since the conservative resurgence? It hasn't been the Dignity Act. No one has heard about the Dignity Act until recent days. So it wasn't a historic position of the convention under test 4. 5, will advocacy on this issue upset certain segments of the SBC? Yes. If yes, the question is supposed to be, is it necessary to take a position or say something? No, there was nothing necessary about this bill at this stage, early introduction, that Baptists said you need to speak up on this bill right now and tell them Southern Baptists are behind it, even though we haven't spoken about it. Number 6, does our advocacy have a chance to meaningfully advance issues of importance to the SBC? I think not. I think no one will read this letter and think, oh, I'm going to support this bill now. I just don't think it advances SBC interests. And 7, how will this affect our relationship with non-SBC coalition partners? Well, there we have a clear answer. It helps us with the Evangelical Immigration Table and the National Immigration Forum that has been supported by George Soros in the past. So it gives us a good relationship with non-Baptist groups, leftist groups, left-leaning groups That answer has a clear positive, but 6 out of the 7 questions, this action should not have been taken according to what the ERLC promised us it would do. It has 7 questions. 6 of them indicated you shouldn't take any action. 7, it doesn't help us with coalition partners we want. It appears to help us with coalition partners we can't bear to say goodbye to. And so whatever hold these leftist groups have on Baptist public policy, whatever would say, if the EIT wants to do it, we'll override our 6 other questions and issue a statement anyways, even as 40% of the convention has said, we're headed in such a wrong direction, we would abolish it. It is mind-blowing that the trustees, and I think the executive committee has to know about this letter either at the time it goes out or before, that they're going to let the ERLC careen down the path of chiding Southern Baptists for not being in the right place on immigration on issues the convention just hasn't addressed.
John, can you hear me? Am I back?
I can. Your screen's frozen.
My screen is frozen. You know, I'm having sort of catastrophic internet connectivity failure over here because, of course, I am. But it sounds like you were holding it down, man. Why don't you just bring it? Okay, I'm going to drop out because something's going on. Why don't you land the plane for us as our co-host on this first CBL co-host on CBL report? I don't know what to say about the internet, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I think unfortunately what we're about to see play out with the ERLC, as we've talked about with Matthew Barrett, if you have different convictions than the Southern Baptist Convention, find a place for you, and it's just not the Southern Baptist Convention, and in some ways that's fine. I really do think the ERLC at this point is so committed to contradicting and shaping and chiding Southern Baptists because they don't believe we're as winsome as we could be. And so instead of advancing Baptist public policy goals in public, instead of celebrating Baptist wins, what churches are doing, it's not a church-focused public policy. It's an expert-focused public policy, and the experts say the Southern Baptists are wrong. For whatever reason, that's who we've hired. That appears to be the direction of the ERLC. I think the trustees, if you're looking at the situation when staff has blown through 6 advocacy questions they've promised you to follow and still issued a letter today that clearly contradicts what Southern Baptists have said about immigration, that goes well beyond what we've ever said about immigration. This is not a group that's willing to take leadership from the trustees or keep its promises, and some change has to happen.
Well said, John. Can you hear me at all?
I can. And let me just say, that's why all of that is a reason I am thankful CBL has been a place that Baptists that does have a kind of a church-focused, what do people in the pews believe? Let's advocate for that. Let's not chide them for how they could be more winsome. Let's advocate what churches want to have happen in the public sphere. And that's only happening right now at CBL. There's some other groups that have been popping up, but I'm grateful for your leadership helping churches have a clear word in public policy.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Maybe you can help me with my internet. Just a brief live editorial correction. Baker is not the imprint. I said earlier, you weren't on the show yet. Baker is not the imprint of Lifeway. That's B&H Academic. I was mixing up my B's there. Yeah, B&H Academic. So thank you to the brother who gave me a chance to correct that. Never making those mistakes intentionally. Yeah, John, I'm going to go ahead and close this out because of whatever's going on. Close out the internet. I'm sure it's the Chinese or the Russians or something like that. But thank you for joining. Obviously, it's clear. It's clear the ERLC has not gotten the message. I mean, you've made that abundantly clear. Thank you for breaking down the bill. And they need new leadership, and that's maybe coming, maybe it's not. But friends, as we've moved past the convention and into this period, as we look to plan for the year ahead, to work to get more Southern Baptists to engage in our denominational system of representation. You know, our denomination runs on Baptist principles of representation. We had less than 10% of all SBC churches represented at the last 2 annual meetings. The Southern Baptist Convention cannot long survive over 90% of our churches disengaging from the work of governing our convention. So as we move forward into 2025 and 2026, one of the things we want to do at Center for Baptist Leadership is really help re-engage SBC churches to take ownership and stewardship of the convention, and then to represent you in the public square with whatever issues that you need help on as a church, issues that are happening more broadly. But we need your help to do that. The Center for Baptist Leadership needs ministry partners and support. So please join us in that today. John, thanks for joining us, man. It's really good to have you.
Thanks, William. Good to be here.
All right, take care. You can go ahead and leave. I'm going to play us out here. All right, John's gone, and let me get our media uploaded if I can. We'll figure this out, folks, but hope that was helpful, and stay tuned for more.
The Center for Baptist Leadership podcast is powered by American Reformer, hosted by William Wolf, with audio production by Jared Cummings. Our music is a custom remix of Soldiers of Christ in Truth Arrayed, the official hymn of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. To help CBL reform and revitalize Christian institutions, please consider making a generous donation today at centerforbaptistleadership.org.